Hey everyone, welcome to the first episode of the Fail to Find podcast. My name is Ben, and today I have a special guest, Joe Cherries from the Nitpicking Nerds. They're going to talk about how they get started in Magic, what made them move to EDH if they didn't start here, and their thoughts on the overall state of the format. Joe, welcome.
Hello, hello. What is up? I'm here. I'm from the Nitpicking Nerds. You know me. So, yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, if you don't know Joe, they're part of the channel Nitpicking Nerds. I don't know how you would know about me and not them, so that'd be impressive. Do you want me to tell me how you got started in Magic the Gathering? What kind of first made you come to the game?
Oh, God. I started in Magic. Let's see. It was after high school, and it was literally from the stupid, terrible game. What was it called? I gotta remember what it was called.
Oh, yes.
Duels of the Planeswalkers.
Yes.
Yes, I started in Duels of the Planeswalkers and like super casual nonsense, like basically not Magic the Gathering, like some weird format that was curated by the creators of the game, and it was terrible. But that started me in the Magic the Gathering, and then from there, me and my friend were like, "Hey, let's play the real game." So we went and we bought starter decks from like Zendikar, and they were just old starter decks from Zendikar. So that got me started in casual. Those are like my first cards.
Okay. Yeah, I remember those Zendikar decks. I actually found some when I was clearing out my old room years ago. I found like the old, it was like the dual decks or something. I remember those. Like that had foil Eldrazi, like green Eldrazi or something.
The one that I am remembering had like overwhelming stampede as one of the front cards and something
Okay.
like that. That's the one I'm remembering because
Oh,
like
okay.
I remember very specifically having that foil overwhelming stampede for so long.
That's so cool. Yeah, I my first foray into Magic when I had to have been like 8 or 9, and I had a cousin who told me about the game because like really into Yu-Gi-Oh. And I went to Walmart with my mom and I got a one of the decks and I don't remember what set it was, but I remember it was a black deck and it had zombies in it and the pictures were so scary to me. I returned the deck because I just couldn't have them in my house. I was so scared.
They took it back. They took
Yeah,
back open magic
this was
product.
yeah, this had to have been in 2000. Oh god. How old am I? Yeah, that was like early 2000s. Like this was years ago before the game got like really popular.
Imagine letting you like that's the best thing ever. Yeah, I gotta return this.
Yeah,
Like
I
return this open magic product.
it was just a deck. It was like one of those old like not even dual decks. I don't remember what it was, but yeah, that was. And then what? So what set do you remember? Like, do you play standard or did you just kind of go from casual like right into EDH?
The first let's see. The first set I played was original Innistrad, like
Okay.
around that time. And I started playing some standard. My first, basically, I went with a super casual deck to an FNM, and the store owner helped me make it into a functional standard deck. And it was like a human tribal deck. It was, but I also was playing Porcelain Legionnaire because that card was stupid in standard when it was around. So it was like right. And then I remember because it was right before the rotation because I think I remember playing Champion of the Parish and all that kind of crap.
Okay. Man, yeah, I remember for me, I got back into the game in 2012, 2013. I think Scars of Mirrodin was like my first foray, like really back into the game with a friend from high school. Took a hiatus and then came back right after I think Hour of Devastation dropped. So that was like my standard. It was like mono red. I was like red deck wins. Um, I think right as Commander started really picking up steam, it was like like Rivals of Ixalan and Ixalan. Because I remember the first precons coming out back in 2014.
The
I
first three
I think
for
the first Commander precons I think were like in 2013, 2014.
oh man, they were around when I first started when I first started in Magic. So yeah, 2012 I think sounds right.
Okay. Yeah, because I started playing Commander when it was just becoming like a format. Like my friend was telling me about it in high school when we were in like 10th, no, I've been 11th grade. Um, so you started with standard. What kind of got you into EDH, or who I guess showed it to you first, and what was your like first steps into it?
Well, the first thing we would play, me and my friends would play 4 player just random piles, uh, and it wasn't really any format. And then we were introduced to CDH through the LGS, or not CDH, just EDH. I don't know why I said CDH. We were introduced in the EDH because of the LGS, and then we turned all of our super casual decks into commander decks. And that was my first like playing and going of it. And then that group kind of fell apart. So I was all into standard again for a long, long time. And I would play commander on and off for the next like few years. And then I started the YouTube channel and I had casually played Commander and I had never gotten super into it. But we were like, hey, I had a couple Commander decks. And like, we're like, let's niche down. We were talking about just magic on
Mhm.
the Nitpicking Nerds in the very beginning. We're like, let's niche down to specifically Commander. So we're like, okay, let's do that. So like I got super focused and hired into Commander right at the beginning of the Nitpicking Nerds again.
Awesome. Do you remember what your very first deck, like what that casual deck was that you turned into an EDH deck?
I remember who was the commander of the like first commander deck I ever made was Maelstrom Wanderer. That I
Okay.
remember.
Oh man, that's good. Yeah, I think my very first one was Intet the Dreamer. I think was my very first like
It's that the Dreamer is like budget. It's the same. It's Teamer, so it's budget.
yeah, that was the like, the idea. I think my friend got it for me because he's like, "Oh, it's super cheap." And then when I got back into Magic around Hour of Devastation, my first deck was a actually the Wedge from the Mana Source did a video on it, and it was a $10 mono blue sorry, $10 Azorius token deck with Temet, the rare from Amonkhet that makes a token unblockable.
Okay, okay.
So it's a $10 like bird token deck. It was the weirdest thing. I just have to find that list. Um, but it's crazy like how the format has changed over time. Like, what are your thoughts on the health of the format in general? Because online, obviously, there's so much discussion about whether it's bad, whether it's good. Um, so yeah, so I kind of want to know another player's thoughts who's not in just my main pod.
So yeah, I think the easiest for me, the health of Commander is good, going to be good, no matter what the bans aren't. I think that Commander, as long as people are discussing and within their play groups and playing within power levels, that the format can't be bad. That said, the thing that I find unhealthy about the format personally, and I've talked about this a lot on the Nitpicking Nerds, but it's the ban list. It's inconsistency
Yeah.
that you can't seem to. The criteria doesn't seem to be followed, and they specifically say that a card could be banned. Like they set this criteria, like as you should with if you're going to make a ban list, you should have criteria. That's always how it should always work.
Of course.
But they set this criteria, and then at the end of the criteria, they specifically say a card could fall into multiple of these categories, or all these categories, or none of these categories, and be banned or not banned. So it's like, well, then I could never know what's going to be banned or not banned. It feels like we have no knowledge into what could possibly be banned, and it feels almost silly to me that the if in the and on top of that, it's also inconsistent. Like there's cards that are banned, and then there's cards that do almost like in the exact same thing that aren't banned.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that. Like there are the lack of consistency is I think really frustrating. And while I understand a lot of discussion I hear is like, oh, just rule zero cards, house ban them or house unban them. I find if you ever want to play outside of your pod, or if you don't have a pod, or for like MTGO, the you have to follow the ban list, and that inconsistency is definitely a frustrating thing. Where you have the rules committee talking about cards like even like the new Elish Norn that just came out, and talking about banning that, but leaving Dockside Extortionist legal
Like
seems you're like you can't get rid of this card that also then hoses Dockside or think about it and then still leave like a menace to the format at least in maybe local pods or online. Obviously, if your own play group doesn't play it, then you might not feel it like my group doesn't. But yeah, like that inconsistency is definitely a frustrating thing.
so interesting. Uh, it's, hold on. I'm trying to think. What was I going to say? I lost my thought there. I had
Oh, I'm so
something.
sorry.
No, you're fine. Hold on. Hold on. But yeah, I guess my point is that things can be like I don't even care necessarily what the ban list entails. Like
Sure.
if it, I'm all for a ban list that bans absolutely nothing, uh, and literally you have to rule zero things out all the time. I'm also for a ban list that is incredibly strict,
Yeah.
where you set a precedent for what you want the format to be like. They've already set that. Like obviously the rules committee has up and said this is what we want the format to be. Good, great, dandy. That's good. But it's like then they do signpost bans instead of actual bans, where it's like they think mass land destruction is kind of problematic, but none of it's really banned except for sundering type. So it's kind of like it's mind-boggling to me. All I want is consistency out of the ban list. Like I don't need to set the rules. I don't care what the rules even are. As long as we follow them consistently, then it'll be good.
Yeah, I definitely think the broadness it feels like they're trying to do both of having a like no ban list, but then having a few cards that are like signpost bans, like you said, where it's you can't have the best of both worlds. Like you really should be like, all right, we're gonna go hyper strict with this, and this is what's gonna happen. Or kind of like when Pioneer started, just all right, there's no ban list except for Power 9 and reserve list cards, let's say. And then just kind of just see how the health of the format goes from there. Because I think there is a lot of self-regulation that happens. So I'm for a oh, let's just unban everything and then kind of see what happens now with newer cards that have been added. Because I think the power of Magic has definitely gone up in the past few sets. So I think just seeing what happens with a no ban list commander um for a period of time, especially now with like EDH rec and all these resources we have that we didn't have at the beginning, or at least early on, we can at least see what happens with cards like Primetime, who, whether you think it should be banned or not, would be interesting to see now where it's like, is it too good? Or are there so many other cards that we have that are just as absurd or more absurd? Or is there more removal now so it's not an issue or more hate effects?
Like
Just an example of that.
what I find interesting about a band like Primetime is it is without a doubt not even close to one of the best cards in the format. We have
For
Soul
sure.
Ring, we have Mana Crypt, we have tons of fast mana, like all over the place. There's Thassa's Oracle, there's Dockside Extortionist. These cards exist and they are very clearly better. But what those cards don't do that Primetime does, and the reason I believe it's banned, I can't be positive because I am again not on the rules committee and I don't speak for them. Um, I assume it's banned because it is very dominant in the mid-rangey matchups and the slow grinding matchups that they kind of want the format to be around. And they think the game revolves around it too much, which is interesting because now when you look at it as the ban, it's like, well, what are we talking about for power? It's like it's not too powerful. Is it
Yeah.
not too fun? It's like, but what makes it not too fun? And I don't like I'm not necessarily even thinking it needs to be unbanned, but it's like when you follow the criteria that leads to a banning of a card like Primetime, it would lead to a banning of a lot more cards, at least logically to me.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think when it was banned originally, and same thing was, I think it was Profit of Crewfix. Um, it what happened from my understanding was the idea was it was just being played in every single green deck, and they didn't like that. Um, and just the power of it, I think at the time where you can get Cabal Coffers or Urborg like right away, and you get a lot of lands, and you can like the game ended up revolving around Primetime. But I just as an example card, just because I think that's one of the ones that are more controversial about being on the ban list. I think there are a lot of people who say leave it on, and a lot who say take it off. Um, yeah, I agree. Like the power level of it, while it's definitely would be one of the best cards in Commander, I definitely feel like we have other cards that are much more egregious in the format.
It's just it doesn't I can't follow the logic is the my thing for like Primetime. Like with like when I take like you could take multiple lines of thinking to get to why Primetime should be banned because there is plenty of good reasons.
Of
But
course.
when I take those lines of thinking, it leads me to believe other cards very similar or should be banned. Like it's they don't ban based on power, they ban based on fun. And that's like, well, what's not fun about Primetime? Okay, the game revolves around it. There's so many 6, 7, 8 drops that as soon as they hit the field, revolve around it. Great example, Razaketh. The whole game
Yep.
revolves around Razaketh as soon as he hits the battlefield. That's just going to happen. Like that's part of the game. And there's a million cards like that at 6, 7, 8, 9. As you go up from 6, those cards exist nonstop. Like the game revolves around these cards when they hit the table.
Yep.
So like there'd be a million more cards banned there if it's for the repetitive gameplay. Now, you want to talk about repetitive gameplay? Costa's Oracle has been one of the most repetitive win cons of Commander for 2 years now. And on top of that, Demonic Tutor leads to some of the most repetitive gameplay I've ever seen in my life. I
Yeah.
mean, it's literally the 2-mana tutor that always gets your best thing for the situation. And it's just, I can't follow the logic of the primetime ban and then also say that the ban list makes sense.
Yep. I mean, to me, I would rather see bans. We're gonna move past prime time, I swear. I would rather see bans of the problematic lands that it could get, rather than because if the issue is it's getting lands and that's too good, then either we can normalize land destruction, because I feel like that is a way of dealing with it, and that feels very taboo, which we'll definitely get to. Or banning cards like Gaia's Cradle, Field of the Dead, maybe Urborg Coffers. As much as I like that combo, I think that's less egregious because it is a 2-card combo. But like Field of the Dead and Gaia's Cradle just by themselves are win conditions for decks. So you could, I don't understand why they're not banning the. You could leave the powerful fun card, but get rid of the parts that make it too good.
Yeah,
So like get what it's fetching. And then the tutor thing, I agree completely. Like I have I think Vamp Tutor in one deck, and Diabolic Intent in one deck, and a Natural Order in Elves. But I tried a deck where I had like 5 or 6 tutors, and it was boring and repetitive. And I definitely feel like, again, you don't have to ban tutors, but it's weird that you have Primeval Titan, this card that just gets lands onto your battlefield, and you're leaving other, I guess, like more, again, like you said, egregious cards that make the game revolve around them. Even there are commanders like Urza, like a mono blue Urza, whose 4-mana, when it hits the board, the game revolves around getting rid of it, and if you don't, you probably lose.
Yeah. Yeah, it's super good point. The land, there's definitely like there's cards like Gaia's Cradle that I can say I undoubtedly believe if Gaia's Cradle was a card readily available and cheap, it would be banned in Commander. It would have to be
100%.
because it runs away with every single game. It's a stupid Magic card and it's dumb. And it actually boggles my mind how much that Soul Ring isn't banned. I still don't get it.
I think part of that is it's the face of the format, sort of like, if I'm not if I'm
Well,
not wrong, like Brainstorm in Vintage or Legacy, like that card's still legal because it's the, even though it's I think egregious, it's the 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 Pikachu of Commander, so to speak.
it's yeah, it's appeal. But then that goes down to the argument of it's just appeal to the edition. It's been good for us in the past,
Yeah,
and therefore it's good now. It's like, but I don't think it is. Doesn't matter if it was fine in the format in the past. Doesn't mean it's fine now.
yeah. But let's get into some more positive. So what do you really like about the format as a whole? Obviously, the ban list, Rule Zero conversations can help kind of alleviate that in insulated pods. But what about the format makes you keep coming back to it and keep playing it and keep brewing year after year, especially doing content where this is kind of what you eat, sleep, and breathe now.
I just enjoy playing Commander. I mean, I just like playing Magic the Gathering, and it's casual. I played a lot of years of standard grinding and modern grinding, and I really, over the past few years, especially COVID, made me realize I don't even care to play it like that at all. Like for real, I do not care to play competitive Magic anymore. Like it's not for me. I understand a lot of people love it, and I'm glad to be away from it. I don't enjoy the grindiness. I don't enjoy the seriousness, the sweatiness of it. I really enjoy the casualness of Commander, where you can just sit down and you don't even have to make the best play every single time. You can just do whatever you want, have fun.
Yeah, that's definitely a draw for me. Is I started Flesh and Blood with some friends as our like 1v1 format, because we always found that the biggest thing that I was missing and some of our friends were missing was that like 1v1 game that we could play in between in between rounds of Commander, or if two of us get knocked out, like we're not just sitting around waiting for someone else. And obviously 1v1 Commander isn't great. So I definitely miss that. So that's kind of filled it with that. But yeah, I agree, the casual aspect of going into a game night with like some friends and never, I don't say never leaving salty, because there are obviously some things if that happen where you're like, okay, really, or you're in a bad mood or someone else is in a bad mood or something happens. But I think for the most part, it's never, there's never like that many feel bads, or if there's an issue, you can at least discuss it and be like, oh, hey, I don't like this deck you made because it doesn't have a win condition and we spent 3 hours playing against Simic value. And it'd be like, okay, cool, I can fix that, versus a competitive format, which, as much as I love competitive, there's definitely that win at all cost attitude. And that's, I enjoy that, but I definitely understand that I wouldn't enjoy it for like a long period of time, because I used to grind standard too, like at my LGS. And I still play at the ladder on arena and stuff. And I definitely found myself having less fun with those other formats than I do Commander. And part of it for me is the self-expression you get building, where you can build weird decks and have weird combinations of cards that people haven't seen before. And I live for that, like, okay, what is that interaction or how does that work? Like seeing that or hearing that from an opponent is great when it's like a special breed that you've worked on for a long time.
Yeah, it's all about casual for me. And like friend hanging out with my friends, I mean that's what it is. It's just a way to hang out and play the game that I really enjoy, and it's with the people I enjoy.
So uh, in play groups, there are obviously, everyone has their, I'm sure, some problems with their play group, whether it's the one slow player or the player who spikes out the game sometime and you're like, what are you doing? Or the proxy guy who, again, I don't mind proxies, and that's a conversation for something else. But if you're gonna do proxies, do it more than a Sharpie on a mountain. Um, so what do you, what's something that you wish, and it doesn't have to be necessarily in your play group, because I'm sure you've played a lot of Commander with other people at conventions, or at your LGS. What's something that you wish players in a game did more of, or less of, or both?
Oh man, good question. I don't know. I don't know. I just like there's nothing. I wish like so. I guess I can just complain about BZ because I'm here. BZ politics too much, and I wish people, well, not people like BZ, but like BZ specifically, politic less. Like it makes you have to politic because he doesn't stop politicking. Like I wanna, like when I play Commander, I just want to let people make a lot of their choices and just sit there and do it. And so, I like politicking. I definitely politic. Don't get me wrong. I do politic, and I definitely don't do nothing like politic wise. But like BZ, it feels like every gameplay is politicking, and it I just sometimes I just want to like sit there and not point out who the threat is and let people figure it out themselves.
Yeah, I definitely, we have a friend in the group who does that, Garrett. He's probably not going to watch this, so I'm going to call him out in the video and see if my friends call him out. Um, he he was notorious for that, I think, for a while, and I spoke to him about it too, because there were times that, when we started it in our group, just some backstory, I was the player who played the longest and played, and one other person were the only two people who played 60 card competitive formats prior to Commander. Everyone else in our group, for the most part, has started with Commander and learned from Commander. So there was this notion that we were the better players, and I think we were at the time. I think being in college and just graduating, I had a lot more time to play a lot of Magic. Um,
Hmm.
so there'd be oftentimes we'd get politicked out of games, even if we weren't the threat, and then they would win. And you're like, okay, like I see what you were going for, but you, it was a feel bads because it felt like there was nothing we could do to combat the politicking other than doing that ourselves, and that's not what we enjoy doing in the game.
Yeah, that's
Um,
how I feel about it a lot of times.
yeah, that social aspect can definitely be interesting. I think one thing that really um, irks me, and I think I see it more in, I don't want to say newer players, but I think it's players who play less often, is there's no thinking about like the turn before it gets to them. So obviously, if it's a newer deck, that might be a little bit harder, but there's no like, okay, I think this is kind of my game plan, and proactively thinking, because then when it gets their turn, they're reading every single card in their hand again and taking 20 minutes to make a decision. And it's like, okay, just try to be a little bit more proactive in the game, and obviously things change. You might draw something and changes everything completely, but there are also other times where you have two cards in hand and you're sitting there for 20 minutes, and it's like, did we could you have done something to try to maybe move the game along a little bit faster? And maybe that's just me being picky.
No, I mean I have a very slow friend who I play with on Fridays. It drives me insane. Yeah, playing at a decent pace is very important because when you sit down in a four-player game of Commander, the idea is everyone's going to get about the same amount of playtime.
Yep.
So when one player monopolizes all of it, it's definitely incredibly frustrating, and it's just annoying. I mean, it's something I've BZ doesn't do it often, but BZ has done it in the past, and I've definitely called him out where it's like you're taking forever. Some of like I know he's taking apart decks because they spin wheels way too hard and they never do anything. It's just
Yep.
like he just takes a 10-minute turn and then nothing happens. Like, well, that was cool.
Yeah, I'm glad my play group is very good about the communication. I think because it's small and we're all pretty close. Um, so there's been oftentimes I've made decks where it's very like wheel spinny, and I'm like, okay, cool. Let me not do that again. Or if there is a deck, one of my friends has a War the Raid Mother deck that can take very long turns, but there's always that conversation which happens is like, hey, do you mind if I play this deck? We know it can be wheel spinny, and everyone's like either, oh sure, it's early in the night, or oh no, it's the last game, we have to leave in 45 minutes. How about we not do that? How about we bust out our like high power decks and like just try to blitz through a game? So there's
Yeah, well,
definitely yeah, those time monopolization is like can be very frustrating, especially with like random people.
yeah. Speaking of your play group, something I learned in the past like 6 months is if you like, I just like our play group just kind of for years had just kept playing whatever we played. Nobody really thought about what we played. We kind of avoided some things like two card combos it
Yep.
seemed, but like we didn't have much of a talk. And then uh I even specifically remember, and it wasn't that long ago, but I specifically remember there was a game where like none of my decks comboed anymore, and I just built how I want. And then I BZ just like we were playing against mono white, his mono white deck, and he just gained infinite life. And I was just like, my deck can't beat that. I'm like, okay, and it's over. You just win. And I was mad about it. So I kind of had to. It's when I started actually being like, oh, I'm gonna start bringing up stuff that actually
Hmm.
makes me upset in Commander.
Yeah,
So I
I
can actually
think
figure it out.
yeah, I think communication in a playgroup is just as important, not just as important as communication in a relationship, obviously, but it's very similar. Where if you let things like fester, um, I think it can cause like a lot of animosity in a group or cause you not to want to play with people. Um, one thing that was happening was because I had graduated, I'm older, I'm the second oldest in the play group, and I had graduated college, and they were all still in college, so I'd go to the dorms to play with them. And what had happened incidentally is an arms race where because we had them proxying, which was fine, like they were broke college students, so it's not a huge deal. And my decks, I'm like, okay, well then I'm gonna start buying expensive cards because I have this disposable income now. Let me do that. And we instantly got into an arms race, um, and there was a lot of discussion we had as a group of like, okay, hold on, let's like tone this back a little bit. Like, what decks don't we like seeing? What decks do we like seeing? And trying to find that happy medium of like, okay, this deck is the strongest deck I own, but if I'm playing against you three and this is your weakest deck, you can still beat me. You might have to focus me down, but I can still be beat versus my strongest deck is I turbo out Locust God on turn 3, Narset Will You on turn 4, and good luck.
Yes, just figuring out what your play group likes. Like you have to actually take the time to discuss it because like I I took way too long to mention and bring up to my play group how much I didn't like the random combos. Like BZ played a lot of what are they? Critical mass combos, and BZ
Yep.
totally is in the background and totally didn't tell me that. Critical mass combos where it was never two, three card combos, but it'd be, hey, I have seven different things on board I can combo, and like we had we had categorized them differently than regular combos. It was like, yeah, it's totally fine if you play that 6 card combo, but it's like even that started to get frustrating to me, where it's just like we would play this game of combat, beat each other up back and forth, and then critical
No,
mass combo, the game's over, and it felt like for me, it felt like the rest of the game almost didn't matter.
yeah, I had that where I have a Thakospara deck that's pretty new. And I was like, all right, I want to like make a tune deck. 'Cause I feel like none of my decks, I felt like my strongest deck couldn't keep up with my friend's strongest decks. And I'm like, okay, I want to build something that is full of like good interaction and has some combos, so it's not just a dirtily bant deck. So I put in Heliod Walking Ballista, I put in Sensei's Dividing Top Devoted Druid, which goes infinite with Thakospara, and all these, and then some tutors. And I remember one game we were playing, and it was like a really close game, and I drew shared summons, and it was late. I had a lot of mana open, and I had to, and so I shared summons up Heliod and Walking Ballista, obviously, because I'm like, all right, let's get this game over. And I had one card on top of my library that I was looking at, and I think it was a land. I drew it, or I shuffled my library, and the next card on top happened to be a Teferi's Pro. And I'm like, okay, so I had enough mana to play Heliod, play Ballista, not combo off that turn. And I just ripped Teferi's Pro off the top. They couldn't interact with me until my turn, so there was no way for them to stop the combo. And that felt bad because it was like, while I won and they were okay with it, it was like I invalidated everyone else's game for the entire time we just played that match because of I tutored up this combo.
Yeah, and that's not how everyone feels. Like obviously, players love combos, and combos are an important part of Commander if your play group doesn't care about them. But it's just like that is also how I feel, where it's like the game often feels invalidated when a combo comes out of nowhere, especially something that's like direct out completely out of the blue. Like, if it's on board and you sometimes can't stop it, it's okay. But something that's just like literally out of the blue, where it's like, oh, well, I could have never done anything to have stopped that. Definitely.
Yeah, that definitely is something that we try to avoid. I'm leaning more towards I want combos in games because I think there was an overcorrection, at least in my group, and I don't know if this is the case in like random pods or like just the conversation online in the more casual spheres. Is like combos are bad, but I would rather have a game end in 30 minutes than play a 2 hour long game where it's just beating face with 1/1s and it's just like you're playing StarCraft, but like 1v1v1v1 and building up these boards until someone hits a Psych Rift or a board wipe or just gets like a critical mass combo. I would rather just shuffle up and like play another game in the evening.
Yeah, that's completely fair. See, I prefer like we play Combat Matters games, and we rarely or ever go over an hour. Like there is some, it definitely happens from time to time, but it's probably like one out of like 5 games, which I like. It's like sometimes it's nice to have one long grindy one, but the rest of them are usually under an hour. They end pretty fast, and we have most of our decks are tuned enough that if we're not interactive with, we're going to win goldfishing by like turn 8. So the games are gonna end quick.
Yeah, I definitely think that's another thing actually is it's people's lack of wanting to swing in where I played some games with last weekend or the weekend before, and I was trying a new Elf Ball deck out. And normally in our group, there's like this fear of like knocking someone out early, but I was like, all right, I'm gonna try something where I just if I can knock someone out, I'm just gonna knock them out. And I did that in like 2 games, and then the next 2-3 turns the game was over. Um, I think people's like aversion, I guess, to swinging or knocking someone out is something that I think people, I say people in general, but I don't know if it's a widespread thing or not, need to like get over their fear of knocking a friend out and just kind of finishing the game off as like quickly as possible instead of being like, oh, your mana screwed. All right, well, I'll leave you alone. It's like, no, just knock me out. Let me get on my phone, and I'll shuffle up for the next game. Don't leave me here for 15-20 minutes saying land go or discarding my hand.
Yeah, I don't mind knocking out players from games, but I also early in the game I tend not to do it. I tend to fall into the I don't like eliminating people early, so it's just like even if I can, I tend to spread around the damage around the table. That's just how I play. Like it's not optimal. I'm very aware of that, but I do it a lot.
Yeah, I try obviously like turn 4, I try not to knock anyone out, but if it's like turn 6, 7, 8, I'm like, all right, listen, you're gonna go because at least in my group, whoever's like not picked on is who ends up winning. So you could be mana screwed for like 5 or 6 turns, and you're left alone enough to kind of build up a board, and then you win. I'm just like, I'm not having that happen anymore. I see it happen too much. At least like in my group.
Yeah.
Um, so do you have becoming a Magic content creator full time changed the way you approach the game in either your own pods or in I guess probably more so like random like pickup games either at like conventions or if you go to your LGS still. Um,
I'm so much more aware of what cards are coming out because of being a content creator. That's the thing that like super changed. Like before it, I looked at spoilers and then I would look at them once and they go in my head. And if it wasn't specifically for a commander deck I had or specifically for a deck I had, it was out. Now I have to sit there and like study every single card. That's what most affects me. It's just like, oh my god, I know so what so many cards do for no reason. Know how many useless, stupid, toxic rares I know what they do from Obi-Wan? Too many. They're all terrible. They don't do anything, Commander. I still know what they do.
Listen, Venerated Rot Priest combos with Dualcaster Mage, so you can win the game that way. I'll have you know. First
I
off,
mean, there's combos. I mean, there is a lot of good cards
of course.
in all Obi-Wan, but there's also like 3 mana 4/4s with toxic one. It's like what I don't care about that.
Yeah,
It's like why do I even know that exists? I don't need to, but it's in my head because I have to look through and read that card over and over again to make sure it's not good in Commander.
yeah. Do you think this set has been more like for standard, more constructed play, or do you think it's more cards for the 99, or just like this is a great set for new commanders as in new leaders of decks?
This seems to be a good set for everything that I've seen. It seems to have good commanders all over the place. I think this is the first. We legit got almost a new archetype. I mean, Infect was a thing, but Toxic slash Infect now feels like a very real deck instead of a niche deck that
Yep.
you have to build. So that's super awesome. There's like I said, there's awesome commanders. I've seen a ton of cool commanders. Both of the pre-con commanders are awesome. I think there's a ton of awesome cards for the 99. And even on top of that, there's awesome cards for standard and there's awesome cards for modern. I watch streamer Aspiring Spike and he's
Yep.
playing a venerated Rot Priest combo and deck right now. And it's like I was just enjoying watching that. It's like I love when a format without breaking anything has an impact or a set has an impact on all types of formats.
Interesting. So I think I definitely agree with you in regards to the 60 card constructed formats. The set seems really good. And for the 99, like the cards in, I just did a video on like the top 10 commons and uncommons because I feel like those cards don't get enough love when people are looking at sets. They always just look at the rares. But as someone who plays limited poorly, but I play limited, uh, those are like the backbones. And it's really cool seeing cards like Vat of Rebirth, which is just a 1 mana artifact that you can reanimate with. That seeing other content creators like mention it, but those cards going under the radar, and I think will be really interesting. However, I think personally, it might just be the commanders that were released. I really don't like. I don't think that I don't like's the right word. I'm not a fan of them as commanders. Of most of the ones that have been released, at least in the main set. In the commander precons, I'd have to look over them again. But in terms of like the core set, a lot of them feel very either boring or tuned back to where they're not very good. But I don't think that's a bad thing necessarily.
Well, see, I haven't looked super deep, and everyone, but the commanders I've seen so far, main set or not, are super interesting. Like even like I find Azuri interesting. Azuri's like this weird proliferate commander. That's super cool. Um, there's a bunch of characters. I think Glissa is super cool. I don't think she's super good. I think she's
Glissa
a
I
super
like. I built
member.
a Voltron deck with her, a budget Voltron deck. And then Kethik, not Kethik. The Rakdos one, the 4 mana Rakdos one that's you can eat a creature.
Oh yeah,
Um,
that one's cool. Also, all the Dominuses. Every one of them is cool. They're all their own unique, cool commanders that are both good in 99s and great in command zone.
yeah, I almost hope I don't see them in the command zone. I'd rather see them in the 99, but I don't think I'm gonna fault anyone for playing them obviously as their commanders.
See,
Um,
like they're very fair because they all have really strong effects, but they're all also monocolored, so it's a huge
Yes.
drawback on them, obviously.
Yeah, that's true. I like the yeah, I mean, I like all of them. Like in terms of just like playability. I think the green one's my not my least favorite, but I feel like the green one's the weakest.
Oh,
But
disagree. The
interesting.
weakest? Are we talking about 99 or as commander?
Let's do both. Let's start with the commander and then let's move to the 99.
Oh, okay. So what's the red one? I think
Is
is the worst for both.
really?
Uh, yeah, the red one's kind of just poop. It doesn't care about combat damage; only cares about non-combat damage. So it's just kind of. I don't foresee many people playing it as commander or in the 99. Whereas like the blue one, also it's fine, but it's not that good either. But it's very hyper specific, like hyper specific.
Oh, the green devil's each creature. I don't know why I thought it was one creature.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
it doubles each creature, each combat. That card's really good.
Each combat you at the beginning of
If
each combat. Oh, that's so much better
it's
than I
kind of,
thought. I thought it was
it's
one
kind
creature.
of, it's kind of I we graded it a C because it's ultimately one very replaceable but very good. Where it's like the card is good, you can slide it in any deck really that you need an overrun in. But on the same exact note, there's better overrun. You can just get it other places.
Yeah, the fact it doesn't give trample, I think, is unfortunate, or toxic one, or something like where even more flavorful. But I understand why not, because the other dominuses don't have that um same thing. It's just like the doubling of an effect. The See, the red one's interesting to me because I just saw a loading ready run mono red commander games night, and they did one of the Bens did a mono red Dragon's Approach deck with the red Dominus, and I thought
I
that
would
was
have been
like that was cool. Or
I would
if it brings in like a burn archetype to commander, I think that would hopefully that's something that it can do. Probably not, but
I mean Torbrand's way better and Torbrand didn't do it, so
see,
I don't
well,
foresee it.
Torbrand is just what +2 to any red source. This is double, so I think that is a huge difference.
Yeah,
Like
but it removes all combat damage, which is another way that it's a huge downside compared to Torbrand.
that's true. Yeah, I'm curious build around the red one just because I want to see if you can do like a burn deck with it. But yeah, the green one I didn't realize was each creature. That definitely is bumping that up a few for me. The mana cost is high too. Um,
Yeah.
which one do you like which one are you the most excited to play with in the 99 of a deck? And if so, like
Uh,
what do you have any decks that are ready to just kind of
I
get them put in?
I don't think for the Dominuses, I don't think I have a deck for any of them currently. I don't have a tokens deck, and I don't have a really a deck that wants the double power. So I don't think any of them are going in my decks. But I am excited for them because they're just cool.
Yeah, I definitely want to try the proliferate one in my Falco Spara deck and put a little more proliferation and maybe infect or toxic as a win condition in that deck. Just so I don't have to rely on Bant combos to win.
Yeah, if you have a proliferate, if you have a commander that proliferates, it's that the blue one's going to be very strong.
Yeah, in Azuri, especially in Azuri, I'm excited to see what people do with that deck because my friend pulled one and wants to do something, and I just the idea of the channel is obviously like really weird brews, so I wanted to do like an Azuri vanishing or fading deck, but they're only I think it was 22 cards in Simic colors with fading and or vanishing, so it's like
Well, yeah,
just not enough.
I mean it's also a terrible mechanic. Who wants to
Oh,
use that mechanic?
awful. But I just want to see what would happen. Um, so this set obviously is a big hit. People seem to really like it. Um, what else do you want to see, or like what do you kind of hope to see from Wizards in 2023 in regards to Commander as a whole, or I guess like Magic in general, but more so Commander.
It's tough. They give you everything. Like we know what sets we're going to already, and it's
Yeah,
really like I already know. Like we know it a year in advance. Everything that's coming from Magic, so it's tough to say. Like, what do I want to see from Magic? I want to keep going to new planes more often. I want to stop repeating planes so often. Like I love Phyrexia, but like okay, and we were where? What was the last set before this? Dominaria.
Dominaria.
Okay,
Yep,
we've literally been there 1,000 times. We did Innistrad the year before. There's
that was
just
cool.
so many repeat sets, and it's just like I want to go to new planes more often. That's what I want to do. Or if we're gonna go back to old planes, let's do ones that we haven't done in forever. New Phyrexia was a good choice. I would fit that in like my haven't done forever. But like, let's go to Lorwyn, Alara. Let's revisit those planes. Let's not go to Ravnica for the 17th time.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I definitely want to go back to Lorwyn or I haven't even thought of Alara. That'd be fun. Yeah, I think I want to see. Do you before I get to that? Do you feel the fact Wizards has been focusing more attention on commander cards? Do you find that to be a benefit to the format? Do you not like it, or do you kind of feel indifferent about it because you could just choose not to play those cards if you don't want to?
Oh, I just think it's a positive overall. I think that there is times when it they with when they focus on commander and they end up making annoying cycles like Fierce Guardianship cycle.
Yep.
But overall, I think the focus on commander has done nothing but expand archetypes, give us more commanders, give us more cards for commander, and just make the format a better experience overall.
Yeah, I think I definitely agree with that. I definitely the cycles, like the free cycles, like you mentioned, definitely can be an issue in my head or in my opinion. And then do you think cards like Jeweled Lotus, let's say, or I guess maybe Commander Legends in general, do you think that is a problem for the format, or do you think cards like that are gonna happen and people can just choose not to play them, or they'll be so expensive unless you're playing CEDH, they're not really gonna be touched?
So I guess if we're talking about Jewel Lotus specifically, I think that card's annoying and it's not really fun, but it's also a totally fine card. It's not broken either. It only specifically works for your commander.
Yeah,
It's, I mean, I don't mind cards like that at all. And also to talk about a set, I think Commander Legends is one of my favorite sets of all time. The original, and Baldur's Gate, though a better draft experience, was a worse set overall, which I find annoying because like I just want like I really love Commander Legends. I think it was perfect for adding cards to the format, being a fun draft experience, and just like the power balance was fine. I like there was things I didn't like obviously Jewel Lotus, like I could have done without that. But
sure.
also Jewel Lotus was a chase mythic for the set, and that's something that when I look at Baldur's Gate, it totally lacked. You didn't have those chase mythics. Like the chase mythic was the red dragon, but it's like comparing that to Jewel Lotus is like laughable. Like Commander Legends One, there's Mana Drain, there's Vampiric Tutor, and there's
Scroll Rack
uh,
was
Scroll
expensive
Rack,
at the time.
Jewel Lotus. They reprinted
Staff Domination?
Staff of Domination, Rings of Brighthearth. There was
Yep.
a ton of awesome chase cards that you wanted, and then Baldur's Gate was just too focused on being themed around D&D that we ended up in the spot where it's like, oh, there's nothing here.
So
There's only this dragon cycle and like almost literally nothing else.
so I think I'm actually gonna disagree pretty strongly with the Baldur's Gate um thoughts. I think part of the issue was the timing of it coming out with Double Masters, and I think Double Masters was a better Commander Legends reprint set, and I think the marketing for Baldur's Gate really, um, I think they botched really hard. I think calling it Commander Legends after that first one, they should have just called it like Adventure in the Forgotten Realms Commander Edition or something along those lines. Because I will be brewing like for new decks, and I'll look through and I'll see a card. I'm like, what set is this? And I'm like, it's Baldur's Gate. And I'm like, oh, why isn't this uh more money? Or why isn't this card played more? I think uh Vile Duplication is the it's a 4 mana blue sorcery that lets you it's a spark double but at a sorcery. Um and I see cards like that and I'm like, wow, this card is good. And I don't remember hearing anyone talk about this card or um I should have brought a list with me. I didn't think about it. I think there are other cards that are really good in the set that just aren't looked at because of the general thoughts of the set. But I think it is a really good set for Commander that people need to take another look at.
No, see, I've looked at it plenty. I think it's not a good set for Commander. It's fine. It's not terrible, but it's I don't know. Like the first Commander Legends, I remember also looking and thinking it wasn't that great. But there's a lot more just in the first Commander Legends comparatively to Baldur's Gate. It's not wasn't that impactful of a set. It's not like I said, it's not bad. There's some good cards. Wizards of Thay is really cool.
Yeah.
Actually, a card I underestimated right away. Font of Magic is fine as a card, but like overall, it just feels like it's such a mess. That I love Commander Legends One. I love Commander Legends Baldur's Gate, but I do wish there was more chase mythics and fun stuff like that.
is it the power of the set you don't like, or is it the mechanics? Because personally, the dungeons I actually really like as a mechanic. It's definitely hard to track in paper, so I will take the L on that. But is it just because the cards weren't powerful, or was it thematically you thought the set was a miss, the timing of it, or just kind of a little bit of everything?
The card, I think its impact being called Commander Legends and its lack of both reprints and new card impact on the format was a total miss for me. And but like I said, I for Baldur's Gate, it is a better draft experience than Commander Legends original. That is where it shines. As a limited format, it is amazing. Like Commander Legends Baldur's Gate is like if like because like original Commander Legends, I have like we played like 40 drafts of it. It was amazing. We loved it. And then Baldur's Gate is even more fun as a draft set, but it's harder to get our friends to want to do it because there's no chase rares. No, everyone wants the chance to open a Jewel Lotus when you play Commander Legends, but you don't get that when you open Baldur's Gate.
So if the set was to change from Commander Legends to not Commander Legends, would you still have that same feeling about the set, or would you say this is set the set overall was a success?
It's I mean it's even if you change it is a Commander Legends set. Like
Sure.
I think even if you change its name, it doesn't change the fact that it's still Commander Legends set. It's the Commander Legends just is the idea of this is intended to be drafted. Cards are made for Commander and drafted as a Commander set and not as a 60 card or a 40 card limited format.
Got it. Okay. Yeah, I'm always interested hearing other people's kind of takes on it. I'm sure you've talked about it till you're blue in the face before. Um, I definitely hope we see another Commander Legends set. I hope one with a little bit more impact like the first one,
I think they
and
just
like
need to
some good
realize
reprints.
they just need to reflect and see what worked about Commander Legends 1 and what worked about Commander Legends 2 and then just bring it together. It's like the reprints are so important to making the set feel stand out and making those big, strong, impactful cards are really important. Like if you're gonna do Commander Legends the third like next Commander Legends, there's no world where I wouldn't put Jewel Lotus as a reprint. It's a perfect reprint. And it's also perfect. The cards they put in, the mana drains, the Vampiric Tutor and Jewel Lotus, like those big cards, um, they were perfect because they were awesome money reprints while not killing the draft format. Because Jewel Lotus
Yep.
was not very good in draft. It was fine. It wasn't bad, but it wasn't gonna. If someone opened it, you weren't mad about it.
Yeah, I hope they do that. I hope there's like some good reprints and then cards that impact the format in a way, but still keeping a very healthy draft environment. What are
Yes,
your thoughts on the Unfinity cards that have been released? Have you played against any of them?
I
Did you
have.
even draft the set?
I didn't play much Infinity, but I do have. Uh, I have a dice rolling deck that has one attraction card in it. So I do have the ability to open attractions. I don't know. They're all perfectly fine. There's nothing wrong with them. Stickers are whatever. I think stickers were the most. It was the most hilarious, funny magic thing to me ever. Where it's just like people just want to get mad about stickers, and they got so mad about stickers,
Yeah,
and for no reason. Because as soon as they came out, everyone was like, oh, they don't stick to my cards. Who would have thought? Who would have thought that they came up with that they use an adhesive that wouldn't ruin the magic cards?
crazy. Yeah, I there's definitely some uproar sometimes about things, especially in the Magic community. Probably a lot of communities, but in the Magic community of like you're getting mad to get mad. Like it just if you don't like it, just don't play with stickers. I don't know. Yeah, that was the biggest nothing burger I remember when like that set was getting announced and like
That whole
it was
set
spoiled.
was the whole set was a nothing burger because
Yeah,
one, it didn't impact anything barely. Uh, two, it's just I mean, unsets are fun and whatever, and people just love getting mad about everything. Like everything was gonna ruin Legacy. Everything was gonna ruin another format. It's like almost none of it sees play. There's like a slight attraction deck in Legacy, but it's very slight.
yeah. Speaking of like uprage, I want to just take a moment of silence for Dong Guy. He will be missed.
No, I'm mad about Don Guy.
That he got
That's
removed or that he was there in the first place.
that they took off Don Guy.
I
Why would they?
agree.
I'm so mad. I would have ordered that secret layer if Don Guy was on it.
I listen. Press F for Dong Guy. That was out of everything to be mad about. I think you're right to be upset about that. At least give us an option to order one with it. Give us the
Yeah,
adult version.
yeah. I was doing hashtag bring back Dongman.
Oh man, that was so unfortunate when I learned that happened. Man.
It was clearly just a dumb mistake by them. They didn't. They clearly never wanted it on there. So I'm guessing the versions they were going to send out never even had them, but they
Yeah.
just happened to put up the art with it.
Yep. I guess real quick before we kind of wrap up, because we're getting close to the hour mark. What are your thoughts? You feel like the quality control in recently has been a little less because we've had issues with the Eggcorn debacle. We've had issues with Dong Guy. There's like a grammatical error on a card. Do you think that Wizards is putting out like too much product and they should maybe slow it down if there are going to be issues with quality control, or do you think it's
Oh,
people
the
is just
grammatical error thing has been happening for years. It happens
sure.
like once or twice a year, every time. I mean, one of the funniest ones ever is from like 6 or 7 years ago. Conspiracy One. That was how long ago was it? It might be. Is that like a 9-year-old set now? Oh my god. Yeah, Conspiracy One. The Monarch token was misprinted. It's hilarious. Let me look it up real quick because I can't remember what it said. It was missing one key word, and it was very, very funny.
Yeah, Conspiracy will be 9 years old June 6th.
Oh yeah, it said at the beginning your end step, not of your
Yes.
end step. At the
Yep.
beginning your end step, draw a card, and it's just like, oh my god, it's so good. And that was the like mechanic
Mechanic.
of the format.
Yep.
So it was so funny for them to mess it up. Or that was Take the Crown, was that the second one or the first one? I think it was the second one, Take the Crown, because Dethrone, or was Dethrone Take the Crown? I don't know. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's from one of the conspiracy sets.
Well, I remember even in recently from as recent as Strixhaven, the commander had the wrong card name in the text on like the original printings of it. Zaffy
Yep,
Thunder Conductor was something else. I don't remember what
yep.
the mix up was.
Yeah, it's just. I think it's just. Um, I agree that it's something that shouldn't happen very often, but also it matters very little. What matter? The ones that matter are the ones that mechanically are different. Like it's very, very frustrating to um the card. Oh god, Camber. Camber just didn't do what the card said. That one's frustrating. It's like when you miswrite the card so that it does something completely different. That is annoying.
Yeah, I don't feel that with Companions, which wasn't a typing error, but just like that errata. I definitely, yeah, I agree with that. That if there's cards are mechanically incorrect, it can cause a lot of issues, a lot of just confusion. And one last thing, do you think the universes beyond cards are going to cause a confusion with like newer players? If there's like the Stranger Thing ones and then the list ones that have different names, but there's no indicator on the card that it's other than maybe the secret layer part on the bottom that it's the same card.
No,
Um,
there's an indicator. Hold on.
it's just on the bottom, right?
Hold on. Let me look. The universes within cards, I believe, have them.
Am I just saying that?
Let me pull up Skyfall. So let's just type in
Here we go. Yeah.
Zaffy. No, not Zaffy. What the card am I thinking? Give me at Ryu.
I was as
Ryu.
equal SDL SLD 3340.
Yeah, so I can see it being a little confusing, but yeah, it is marked that it is another card.
Yeah, because it has SL. Okay, I wish there was like a clear kind of like what they did with the Godzilla cards, where they had the name underneath it. So if it was as universes within, it had the secret layer card name. But that's just nitpicking. I just wanted to kind of get your opinion on that.
Yeah, fair.
To make sure I'm not out of touch here. All right. Well, I think we're coming up on the hour. So, Joe, thank you for taking the time to speak with me today. I really
No
appreciate it,
problem.
especially on the first episode. Where can everyone find you if they haven't heard of you before?
They can find me at the Nitpicking Nerds. It's a YouTube channel. We're pretty tiny. You might be able to find us. Try typing in NITP and see if we come up on YouTube. That might help.
And yeah, and if you find I Hate Grave Titan, you can try searching for that, and they might also show up.
I wonder
Uh,
if we I would love to see if we show up when you actually search that.
Let me know in
Let's-
the comments if you try it.
I'm gonna let you know right now because I
My sweet
hate
engagement.
Grave Titan. Do we come up? Yes, we do. In fact, we're the first three. It's just 3 shorts.
See, look at that. So if you ever want to find them, you can also search "I Hate Grave Titan" on YouTube.
And you can see one of the best thumbnails for a short we have. It's Beezy sitting in a chair. Wow, with a really dumb face.
I'll definitely make sure to throw that up on screen here for everyone to kind of look at.
It's kind of hilarious.
Well, I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to spend an hour and kind of talk about Magic and everything. And I appreciate your help on the channel for some of the advice you've given. You've been great. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Let me know in the comments what you thought of the podcast. And this has been Ben with Bathroom Brews MTG and Fail to Find Podcast. And remember, always wash your hands.